Hello, biology. This is Mrs. Kozian, and this is going to be your very first set of video notes. We're going to run through these together in class. So if for some reason you've missed class, you need to go ahead and take these at home on your own. Now we're going to start by taking these as Cornell notes. That's the way we're going to begin. And what you want to do is, this is just kind of a rough outline of what a Cornell note should look like. Here, you're going to have these two separate parts to begin with. Do not draw a line for this third section for the summary until you're completely done with the notes. Right here in the white section is where you're going to write things like definitions, vocabulary words, maybe information from the slides that you see. I would not just copy everything from the slide word for word. I would definitely try to paraphrase as much as you can, and as much as you can that's going to make sense for you. So these are the notes that you actually take. Then my recommendation is that every 2 or 3 slides that you stop over here in this column to the left, and you write down main ideas, questions that you might have, and also questions that might put some of the ideas over here in the notes together. These measurements are just guidelines. They don't have to be perfect like that. When you are completely finished, before I forget, just another reminder, over here in Q's, make sure you write down questions that you have as you're going through the notes. Because if you have them, that's something that we can discuss the next day when you're finished with the notes. Down here at the bottom, the summary is where you're going to take all the information that you got from the notes and maybe possibly from questions in class, and you're going to summarize what we talked about in the notes. This first set of notes is going to be called Introduction to Biology and What is Science. I would put that at the title at the top of your Cornell notes. So you guys have your columns, and in the right-hand column I would put Introduction to Biology, What is Science. Right here is just a list of key vocabulary that you're going to see in this unit. I will try to put this at the beginning of every PowerPoint that we go through in our notes. We are going to start today getting through to the word inference probably. And then after that, we're going to talk about the scientific method. Then later on next week, we are going to design an experiment. So you don't have to copy down this key vocabulary. It's just there if you ever need to go back to it. Okay, what is science? The very beginning of these notes. Science. The goal is to understand the natural world, and the goal of biology specifically is to study life. It's built up over years and years and years of time. Scientists are constantly collecting data to help build on the understanding that they already came to in their original hypothesis. It's a very organized way. It uses data and controlled experiments when possible to gather on to build on that body of knowledge. What science is not, and the other word that you would say to describe maybe the opposite of science is actually pseudoscience, and that would be perhaps a science that does not gather data, doesn't work with a hypothesis, or work through a controlled experiment. Example, it can't answer questions of faith. Some of that stuff you guys see on Discovery Channel, like ghost chasers, stuff like that, that's more like pseudoscience, not something we can actually gather data about. Traits of a great scientist. They're skeptical, and we'll talk later about exactly what does it mean to be skeptical. They ask questions, but they're also very willing to accept new ideas based on data. For example, if a great scientist might gather data about one idea, but then if someone else came up with data that disproved it or built on it, they might be willing to change the hypothesis and test it again. And the term hypothesis. We always say that a hypothesis is an educated guess. I want you guys to add to this definition. It's an educated guess that can be tested. We're going to talk later about what's the difference between an educated guess that you might make in everyday life and what a hypothesis in science would be. It's a possible answer to a problem or scientific question that is presented. Oh, sorry, I went backwards. Twice. An example that you guys may have seen in middle school is the if, then, because hypothesis. If someone jumps off the roof, then they will fall because of the force of gravity. We will work on creating a hypothesis in this way and also in other ways as we create your experiments next week. Okay, observation. We talk about the terms observation and inference together. Observation is anything that you're going to use your 5 senses to gather. So something that you see, taste, touch, hear, or smell. Observations can be used to gather data. We'll talk later about the difference between a quantitative observation and a qualitative observation. So very simple example, I see a frog. There are other observations I can make about the frog. The frog is green, the frog is large, the frog is living in a lake. Those are different things that I would gather with my five senses. Examples of those things that I would gather would be any kind of data, any kind of evidence I gather from observation. You guys have done time and mass, velocity, things like that in your physics class. In chemistry, you might have done mass and temperature. Color change, we actually talk about a lot in this class. We have indicators, biological indicators that will change color in a certain solution. So any one of those things can be considered data. Now, there are two types of data. In science, we really like quantitative data. We want it to have a number so that we can measure it. If you guys ever get into, an IB class or any type of like research in college, you're going to look at like sources of error in your data. Well, we look at them in this class too. You don't have to be an IB to do that. But you're going to look at what is considered significant in quantitative data, like the numbers you see in quantitative data. So anything that has a quantity, time, mass, volume, weight. Well, we don't use weight in science, but we like quantitative data whenever possible. You can't really change a number. You can't, 1 to someone in one group is the exact same as 1 gram to someone in another group. You can't really change quantitative data. It's not based on opinion so much. Qualitative data is the exact opposite. Think qualitative quality. It's a quality of something. It's descriptive data. It's more an opinion. Qualitative data might be used to say how something feels, how you think something tastes, how you think something smells. It's always words. It's not going to be numbers. So hot, cold, whereas quantitative data would be like 96 degrees or cold would be 0 degrees. So qualitative data is almost always going to be terms, not numbers. And scientists don't love qualitative data if they can help it. It's much more difficult to standardize qualitative data. Warm to one person might not be the same as warm to someone else. And inference. Now, so we've gathered all of these observations, all this data, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, and we take that information and we make an inference out of it. An inference is a conclusion based on evidence or reasoning. So an inference would be the water is 96 degrees, therefore most people thought or called it warm. That was kind of qualitative and quantitative all in the same one. But an inference would be when the sky is gray, that's an observation you make, it might rain. That's the inference based on the data that you have gathered. It's an educated guess based on data you know. And that is the finish of our first set of notes. All about what is science and the definition, kind of beginning scientific method.